Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artists Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artists Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere.
Hi, this is Ron Fortier with yet another podcast. This one, I always say they are all unique, but I think our next guest is probably going to get the record for the youngest ever so far. And this episode will be, I believe, number 145. So we're making some progress, that's for sure. And before we introduce the guest, I'm going to remind you that our podcasts are made possible in part by the Mass Cultural Council with our local cultural councils. In this particular case, it'll be the New Bedford Cultural Council. With that in mind, I'm going to ask our guests to introduce themselves.
I'm Chloe Costa, Chloe Costa.
Chloe Costa. The first time I met Chloe was at a New Bedford Light Fine Arts Breakfast Club meeting at what was it, at the New Bedford Art Museum?
Yes, it was the New Bedford Art Museum.
Okay, and she was the youngest person there, and I'll let you I'll let her give you a brief background on herself in just a bit. It was a really almost standing room only kind of crowd, and the whole purpose of the New Bedford Light Fine Arts Club is to introduce young artists. Chloe's really pushing the envelope on this one. And she sold a piece, which is like fantastic. So it was her coming out, and people got to see her work. So it was almost a one-on-one, the way these meetings go for the New Bedford Light Fine Arts Club. And I'll let her tell you all about it.
So the New Bedford Fine Arts Club.
New Bedford Light. Yeah, it's a lot to think about.
New Bedford Light Fine Arts Club.
Yeah.
That was the first real art show that I've ever participated in. I'm only 13 years old. So I've been doing art for a very long time, and I really do love doing art, but I never thought of, hey, let me go put my art up and sell it. I always just thought, yeah, it's a hobby, something that I'll show my parents, show my friends, and that's about it. But when the opportunity came to me through one of my mom's friends, it was like, wow, I never thought something like this could happen to my mother posting my art on Facebook. And I got to meet a lot of artists. I did not know that the art community was that big. I got to just meet some amazing people with different art styles who were much older than me, but so experienced and just completely amazing. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, there was a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of age levels. There was also, I think, another young man. He was a former basketball standout at New Bedford High, Marcus Montero.
Yes, I got to talk with him about art, just one-on-one, talking about our different styles and how we got into it. He was really kind.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. What else about that evening do you remember?
Well, it was just amazing. It was beautiful, and when I was going up there, I was scared to death. I'm like, I had put a script together, and I'm like, what if I don't remember what to say? I don't want to go up there with the script because I want to be like professional. But I was just nervous. But right when they called my name, I put that script to my mom, and I'm like, I'm going up there. We're just gonna wing it. We're gonna try our best. Try not to like stutter or say anything. And I just kind of took a deep breath in and went for it. And it was very scary in the moment, but after a while of just talking about it and seeing how everyone just seemed so interested in what I was saying, it was like, wow, okay, they care about what I'm putting out. And having people compliment it and give questions was just absolutely such an amazing and great experience for me to get my art there, and then meeting you and meeting so many other amazing artists who wanted to see my portfolio and wanted to see my art, and the fact that I got to sell both of my pieces, one for double the price, and I was commissioned to do another one. I was just like, wow. And my whole family showed up. Two of my close friends from school showed up, and I'm just like, I can't believe so many people would want to come and see me with my art.
It is a great feeling, isn't it? But
Yeah,
as they used to say in the old television commercials, but wait, there's more. From that evening, other things happened. Could you tell us about that?
oh yes, the uh since my first art show, I've definitely done a lot. I My children's book Butterfly Adventure has been finished and is now in the editing and soon publishing stage, which is amazing. I was able to do recently a art show at Gallery X. It was the theme was a room full of blue, so I got to draw two pieces for that, and I sold one of them for $100. I have an art show coming up very soon for the Whaling Museum. That's women of color in the New England area, which is really cool for me having be a female in New Bedford who gets to research other historical people who have done so many great things and put that up at the Whaling Museum. I won a competition called the Neuroscience for Kids competition, where I had to ask a question about neuroscience. The prompt was, my brain is like a blank because blank. So I put my brain is like a chameleon because it's constantly changing and adapting to the world around it. And the whole main part of that was draw a photo. So I drew like a color changing chameleon with a brain in the background, and I had won. I was the only winner for middle school, which was amazing for me. And I have one other art show at Gallery X coming up where the theme is the four elements: fire, earth, water, and air.
Wow. You are one busy 13-year-old, that's for sure.
Definitely am.
Now you're going to be going into freshman year, I suppose, next year,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Uh,
next year.
where are you going to school?
I'm going for high school. I'm going to be going to Bishop Stang.
Bishop Stang. They have an art program there?
They do have an art program, yes.
I think I remember the instructor, but as the older you get, sometimes it seems like, oh yeah, that's so and so. Like, well, he's been retired for 10 years. I can't remember who the teacher was. Do you know the name?
I don't think I do, no.
I heard that it was a pretty good program there.
Yeah, I did a tour a few times at Stang, and I've gotten to see their art room and learn about their art program, and it definitely seems like something that's very interesting for me, seeing all these people using different mediums. Some are using acrylic, some are using markers, some just colored pencil, and getting to see people show their styles around the school. It's really, really cool.
So it's an important part of the curricula then. It's not
Yes,
just
it is.
a study hall where you can draw.
No, it's definitely a very important part of the Stang curriculum, yes.
All right. Thinking ahead, because high school is going to go by like a flash. I remember
Oh,
telling that to my granddaughter, and then when my youngest daughter went in, I said the same thing, and it was blink, boom, done. It's amazing how fast it goes. So, what are you already looking into? Higher education, college. Are you already looking into art schools?
I've looked at different colleges, yes, because I don't know what my future holds. I know art is going to impact it in some way, whether it's a full on career or just something I do on the side. I know it's going to be somewhat impactful. And I've looked at different schools, especially the CalArt in California,
Mm-hmm.
just like it's such an amazing school. There's some local schools that are really have really good art programs, and I guess it's whatever the future holds for me. is what the path I'm going to take, and I'm hoping high school will open up these opportunities for me to figure out, oh, I want this, oh, I want to do that. So fingers crossed that high school will help me make a decision.
Exactly. Yeah. One of the things that if you go into a good program, they will pretty much introduce you to as many media as possible. You might go in saying, okay, I'm a two-dimensional artist. I'm doing stuff on my iPad and I'm drawing, and I want to get back to that because I thought that was very cool. Coming back to that in a bit. And so you're drawing, the old-fashioned way with a pencil and a pad, and they introduce you to sculpture, something, say, for example, that Stang doesn't have.
Right.
And all of a sudden you go, oh goodness, I really love doing this. So now you haven't changed your career path. You're just in another, imagine yourself on a train. You're just in another train car,
Yeah.
same tracks, that
Yeah.
that kind of idea. Going back to the thing that really impressed me about you, especially because of your age, um, is in a lot of people like me who've been art educators, and a lot of other people who have been in a position where they had to hire people to do artwork for them, were very, very frustrated because either A, the young person never learned how to draw the old-fashioned way with a dry medium and paper,
Mhm.
or they refused to. And the fact that you decided to do it on your own because of what you told me, doing it the old-fashioned way, let's use that term,
Mhm.
does what for you?
Oh my gosh, a lot. I mean, I get to experiment with different mediums, which is something you can't do on the iPad. And although I do both, there's just something different about doing it on paper. You get to sell the art. You get to experiment with so many different styles, whereas iPad, it's one pen, one colors. Like, there's not a lot you can do. Whereas with paper, it's just, there's such a feeling for me. It's just so much better for me as a person who's been doing traditional for so long and has only been doing iPad for less than a year. It's just opens up so many opportunities for me.
Yeah, there's the tactility, which is something that you really can't get out of an iPad now. My wife is a as she likes to say, she's a graphic designer by day and a
Mm,
surface designer by night. And the surface design is completely different. She draws these incredibly beautiful patterns. And I was kind of surprised that the pencil that comes with her iPad has these different tips, but it's still nothing. There's this slickery feeling with an iPad. You don't get the drag that you get with the paper. What I mean by drag is the resistance, the friction between the
right.
point of the tool that you're using and the paper. And there's none of that push pull.
Mm,
The push gives you a darker, sometimes wider line, depending on what medium you're using, and the
right.
pull gives you a lighter, uh, thinner line, because
Right.
it's all about friction.
Yeah.
Um, if you had to make a choice between either or, which, in other words, whatever choice you make, the other one will never ever be available to you ever again. Which one would you choose?
Oh, traditional. I love traditional. I mean, digital art opens up a lot more opportunities. I mean, it's easier to color, it's much easier to do line art. But when it comes between the two, I've been doing traditional for so long. It's impacted my life in so many ways. It's more valuable because it's only one of a kind. And there's just something so different about feeling the marker or the pencil between your fingers and just drawing on a pad of paper, because iPad's good and all with digital art, but when it comes down to like having a pad of paper and a pencil, I would choose the pad of paper and the pencil any day.
Yeah, the tactility goes beyond the touch.
Mm.
There's also smell. I
Yeah.
mean, if you use certain markers have certain, alcohol smells or other
Yes.
kinds of smells. The paper itself has its own aroma.
Mhm.
Especially when you crack open a brand new pad. It's just something, it's like Christmas
Yeah.
morning,
Yeah.
Um, the the subject matter that you've chosen, you're pretty much, I don't want to say all over the place because that doesn't sound cool, but you are you're versatile. There's a better word. You're versatile.
Yeah.
Please explain to the folks, and they'll be able to go on the our website, theartistindex.com website, and depending on when they visit, they'll either see you right on the homepage or just do a search for you,
Mhm.
and you'll have your own page,
Oh.
and that page will have a little bio about you and so on and so forth. Plus, it'll have examples of your work.
Mhm.
So please explain the various styles of work that you've been investigating.
Oh yeah, I do a lot of different styles with a lot of different mediums. It's definitely, like you said, all over the place. But sometimes I'm in the mood to do something a little more cartoony with my alcohol markers, because boy, do I have a lot of alcohol markers. And that's usually what I do. But there's so many styles of cartoony styles that I have as well. There's the ones with the big round eyes. There's some where the eyes are a little more sketchy and narrower. I do paint sometimes, although not as often as I do with markers. I have painted before, and there's so many styles of that. Pencil is usually where I get my realism from. When I do something realistic, it's always pencil for me, which is a lot of fun. I do realism every once in a while. I've drawn a realistic tiger, a realistic eagle. I've drawn a realistic eye, lots of different realism, and that's always with pencil because that's where I'm most comfortable. I've done charcoal before. I'm not a big fan of charcoal, but I have done it before for shading. I'm big with my white gel pens because those give everything a little bit of life, whether you're using a pencil or you're using marker or you're using paint. The white gel pens and the outlining just make it all beautiful. I did a dragon once where that was like half realism, half cartoony. It's just whatever I'm in the mood for. I've done tarot card styles, just everything. I am very versatile with my different styles and the different tools that I use, which I think, and like I said, I do digital too, but like I've said before, it's just whatever I'm in the mood for, and it gives me a lot of wiggle room where some people might like this better and some people might like that better, but I can cater to everyone's enjoyment of different styles. Whether you like realism a lot or you like cartoons a lot, I can cater to whatever you want.
Yeah, and the other important thing too is to also remember your age. You don't want to get yourself narrowed down to just one thing, because one of the
Right.
biggest problems that I had when I was teaching freshman foundation, I remember at the University of Miami, you'd have the students come in, and I would always give them 20 minutes before I even introduce myself, set yourself up, 20 minutes, set up, whatever it was the setup was. And then I'd walk around the room and just let them go for 20 minutes. And you could always tell, oh, this one was, probably the star artist in their high school. This one, everybody has a different personality and even ability level. And the ones that were the toughest ones were the ones that were the high school star.
Mhm.
They didn't really want to learn anything beyond what they already knew,
Right.
and they were the most timid. And then the ones that had a passion but didn't have the skills quite well defined yet, they were the best ones,
Mhm.
because they figured, hey, what am I going to lose? You
Mhm.
know, whereas the high school star always felt um, there was this preciousness to
Mhm.
everything.
Yeah.
Uh, One of my favorite instructors ever, Herb Cummings at SMU, Southeastern Massachusetts University,
Mhm.
used to tell us that it's all perspiration. And, everybody would scrunch up their nose like, what? It's all perspiration. The drawing is the perspiration of your mind. You're working your mind, and now you're creating this piece of work that
Mhm.
is it's really not precious. It's just another step, another level. I mean, musicians don't record themselves doing scales.
Right.
Imagine buying streaming somebody's la 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 la. Except for maybe what was the one with Whoopi Goldberg? Um, oh my goodness, the one with the nuns. Um, Nonsense, I think it was called. Yeah, where she's uh hiding from the gangsters, and she's a choir director with at a Catholic school, and that's about the only time I've ever heard la 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 la. Right? I mean, but imagine what's okay, but an entire album full of la la las. It's just doing
Yeah.
scales. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's really, really, really important. Um, Inspiration. Everybody always asks the artist, "What's your inspiration?"
Yeah, it's definitely a question that I get a lot. Is the what's your inspiration? And could say anything, but I get a lot of inspiration from a lot of different sources. And I credit that to why I'm so versatile with my styles and why I don't have a art style. I have multiple art styles. I watch a lot of YouTube videos with artists trying out cool hacks to art, and that's when I'm like, oh, I'll try that. Let's try it out. I'll follow their steps. Sometimes I'll be scrolling through Instagram or Pinterest and I'll find something cool and I'm like, oh, I wonder how this drawing would look in my style or how this style would look on a drawing. And I would try it out and then say, oh, I like this part, but I don't like this part. Let's change it, figure out a new way to do it. And eventually, with a lot of trial and error, it becomes my art style. So I start with some drawing I see on Instagram or YouTube or anything, Google, and I'm like, let's try it out, see what I like, see what I don't like, and make this style my own. And I get a lot of inspiration from sources like that.
Well, inspiration also comes from education. Have you delved into any art history as of yet?
In a sense, I have before in the past seeing like different like ancient artists and other artists and how much art has just evolved over time. There's just so many different mediums and how different mediums come into play. Like I remember going to a art museum very recently in near Boston, like the Rentham area, and going in and seeing all these different types of mediums, people who are young and old and everything. And some take a lot of inspiration from the more ancient artists who back all the way back, and others take more inspiration from newer styles and techniques. So it's just really cool to see how even art like history can like adapt and still affect what people make now.
If you have a chance to go to the Museum of Fine Arts, the MFA in Boston,
Mm.
and it's got to be a whole day, and they even have a really great cafe there, so you don't have to leave the building to get something really good to eat. I was kind of amazed at how good it was, and it was reasonable.
Yeah.
And there's one of the galleries, because a museum is all the different rooms in a museum are called galleries, and it's the
Right.
American Contemporary Gallery was phenomenal. It was amazing because you'd go from within that gallery, like one room to another room to another room to another room, and you'd see all these different artists from the 19th century, actually even some 17th, 18th century artists, all the way up to the 21st century. Uh,
Wow.
and it's like ooh, 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 ooh. you know, you just can't
Yeah.
like blast through the room. So that would be a really great day to make of it,
Yeah.
to go up
I would
there.
definitely have to check that out.
The other recommendation too is, since you're a Catholic school girl,
I am.
right, is Sister Wendy. Believe it or not, if you Google Sister Wendy, I believe she may her PBS shows may be on YouTube, and
Hmm.
she is this very soft-spoken, very slow-speaking woman who was cloistered. She was a cloistered nun.
Hmm.
When they let her start speaking about art, she didn't stop until she died.
Wow.
She was I think in her 70s, maybe her 80s, when she went public. Came
Mm,
out of the cloister, and she is absolutely phenomenal in her gentle way, and some really good art lessons there to uh, to listen to. Um, so the next show, Earth, Wind, Fire, Water.
yes.
What are you thinking about?
So I actually started my piece yesterday during the snow day, and I am really big fan of dragons. I did for Gallery X. One of my blue things was a dragon, and it sold like first day sold. So that was cool for me, and I'm like, well, if people like my dragon so much, let's do it again. It's the best idea I had. So I modeled some dragons, four different dragons off of the different elements. So the air one had like feathers on it, and it was like a light gray colors. My fire one had, of course, fire colors: red, yellow, orange. And it was like had the wings made of fire, and the tail had fire coming off of it. My water one has, instead of wings, it has little fins, and its feet are little flippers. And the earth one is like made of wood. It has leaves coming off of it. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that's yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I Now let me ask
Mm-hmm.
you a question. If there were dragons,
Mm-hmm.
okay, why do you think there aren't any dragons anymore?
Uh, I always thought of it as like, well, if there were dragons at some point, maybe the same thing happened to the dragons that happened to the dinosaurs, where some big massacre wiped them out. Whether it was different from when it was dinosaurs or it was around the same time. I mean, there has been like evidence before that maybe a dragon could have existed, possibly. But I think if dragons did exist at some point in time, I think the thing that might have wiped them out was some type of disastrous event that happened where they were, that just wiped them out, because we saw it with the dinosaurs. It happened. So it, who knows that it didn't happen again, it didn't happen before the dinosaurs were wiped.
I mean, the whole thing with dragons, there was a whole thing about that. There's magic,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yes.
The ancient Chinese also had their dragons,
Right.
and Western Europe, those are the only two dragon civilizations that I can remember. Western Europe, during the Dark Ages, had dragons as well. And I'm thinking about the Dark Ages. They didn't call it the Dark Ages for nothing. I mean, there were
Right.
plagues, there was wars, there was nasty, nasty stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
the Roman Empire had um, dissolved, and there was no law and order.
Yeah.
Um, so, in some cases, do you think dragons personified evil, or do you think they personified something else?
I think, just judging from how much like the Chinese worship dragons and how much some European civilizations worship dragons, maybe some civilizations used it as a personification of evil, but it seems like a lot of them worshipped dragons in a sense. I mean, you can just look at drawings back in history, once again with art history. You can look at some drawings from especially ancient Chinese civilizations where they were drawing dragons. And even like now, dragons still very much impact a lot of different civilizations. So maybe some civilizations could have used it as a personification for evil, but I think a lot of them had some respect or worship for dragons.
Hmm. I'm wondering too about when you mentioned the Chinese. I believe there were at least three classes or categories of dragons that depended on how many fingers they had.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there was one, and again, I'm just shooting from the hip from memory.
Mm-hmm.
One level of dragon was very, very it's like royal, the royal level, and it just work its way down.
Yeah.
Why are people still mesmerized by dragons?
I think especially for more like civilizations who back in the past did worship dragons in a sense, a lot of them just have a respect for the history that dragons brought to their ancestors. So a lot of them, I bet, still are impacted by the legacy that the ancient people felt about dragons. And like you could see other different civilizations and how their um, ancestral beliefs were affecting their lives now. It's history for them. It's a history being of their ancestors past. And I feel like that's why they're so impacted by dragons now, is the fact that it's such a big part of their culture's history that it's still impacting the people's lives today.
Hmm. Yeah. So one of the things about when you're doing your drawings, you just told me a story. So I'm assuming that you're doing a drawing of a specific dragon, it's just like, okay, this is the red one, this one's the blue one, uh, th are you giving them character and personality and probably even a little backstory in your own head?
Oh yeah, I do that with any original characters, dragon, not dragon, alien, whatever character it is. I always think while I'm drawing them, like if I'm, for an example, for the dragon that I did for my Gallery X art show, I was coloring it and I'm coloring it dark blue with little stars and I'm like, why do you think it has little stars on it? Why am I choosing this color scheme? And then I'm thinking like, oh well, it's a type of night dragon, and it's like, well, like what made it a night dragon? Was it born into a race of night dragons? Did it choose to be a night dragon? I'm giving it backstory. I'm giving it personality. I'm drawing it flying, and I'm like, maybe its dream was to fly and it couldn't, and then figured out how. And I'm like, what am I doing? I stopped drawing. I'm too mesmerized thinking of these different drawings, and I'm like, all these backstories that I'm sitting there staring at nothing for an hour and forgetting that I need to draw. And I do it with any character. I do it with dragons. I'll do it with anything. How did it get this scar? Why is it blind in one eye? How did that happen? Like, there's just so much backstory that could go in. And sometimes I even write down my characters' backstories because I want to remember it. I don't want to forget, oh, this is what happened to them. This happened, you know?
That's excellent because it was the moment you said it was, a dark dragon with stars on it. I was like, oh, my first thought was looking up into a night sky and
Yeah.
thinking they may be right in front of me and I can't see them because they're camouflaged.
Yes.
And it's what they call the suspension of disbelief,
Mhm.
uh, where you stop um, disbelieving. You stop. Uh, you believe,
Right.
and that's so cool.
Yeah.
Because do you find that when you do that in your characters, that have you ever done an experiment where you were just going to knock off a dragon? It's a dragon, it's just a design dragon, blah blah blah, and then you put that out there, and then you put a dragon that has this bit of a backstory, like you just related to me. Um, do you feel that people, the viewer, okay, um, the viewer picks up your vibe?
I try to make that what people see. Like if I do that with some of my original characters. About 2 years ago maybe, I drew a set of aliens and I'm looking at all of them and I'm like, I drew one and I made all this character, and then after that I'm just knocking out characters. So when I take it, I kind of have a special favoritism towards the ones that are special, but when I show people like some random dragon, for example, just some random dragon, I drew it, it's red, it's got blue stripes, like whatever, it's a dragon. They're like, oh, that's really nice. What's your inspiration? I'm like, ooh, it's a dragon. That's all I have. But when it's a character or a dragon that I put a lot of effort and work and I put a whole backstory into it, and they say, oh, that's really, really cool. That's amazing. I love it. I love all the detail. I love this. Like, I love that. What was your inspiration? I can say, well, backstory. And then I'll explain this happened and that happened and this is why. And I feel like now the viewer is going to be like, well, this one has something special to it. This one has a special purpose, has some type of story to it. If I'm choosing between the two, I'm going to choose the one that has the story. I did that for the my first art show when I met you and I had my alien character Leroy. I gave him a backstory. He's an alien. He fell out of the sky, had to learn to adapt to some Earth society, and I even modeled him off of myself in a sense that he didn't feel like he belonged until he found his group of people. He found the people who cared about him for who he was, which is something that I can really, really relate to. And just making him and having him a story and having him smile, because he used to not smile in my drawings. He used to be like this very like introverted, didn't want to talk to anybody, but having him just smile in a drawing and how much symbolism one little mouth can make, showing that he was happy, that's a piece that I had two people fighting over because they wanted it. That's the one where I had to make the commission for, because they wanted that character so bad and how much it
Oh, I
meant to.
remember. One of them was a lady, right?
Yes.
She was a
Yes.
little. I remember her. She came up to me. She was like really like grumpy, and I thought she was going to start something like, well, I thought she was going to sell it to me because I had talked to her, and it's like, well, oh,
Yeah,
hey,
I thought that was gonna happen too.
every artist wishes to heck they had people clawing each other for you.
Yeah, yeah, because no, it was hard for me. Like, I had the lady you're talking about came up to me, and she goes, "So when do you want to do the transaction?" And I'm like, "Well, I mean, we can do it like after the show is over." And she goes, "Yeah, yeah, okay, I'll come back to you." And then I'm approached by someone else, and she goes, "So I want your piece." I'm like, "Whoa, wait a minute." And apparently, my mom had already been reached out by the person who ended up buying it, because that's my cousin. She had already reached out, like, how do I buy her art? And I'm like, um, just tell her she can take it. So now I have two people fighting over it. And I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm calling over my mom. She can't see me because there's a crowd around me. I don't know what to do. And eventually, my cousin, who's going to be my godmother for confirmation, she comes up to me and she goes, I'll pay double. I'm like, oh, I was not expecting that. So I ended up giving it to my cousin because she paid double. That's insane. So then I have the other lady coming up to me and she goes, so she had the money in her hand.
Oh.
I'm like, so I might have sold it, but I can take down your contact information and I can commission you another one. And she goes, she's death glaring, my cousin, and goes, yeah, that'd be okay. I'm like, okay, cool. So I gave her, we got down the contact information, and I was able to give her the piece, but I was just sweating. I'm like, what am I going to do? I have two people fighting over my piece. How would I know my first art show would end like this?
Yeah, things that you couldn't have even dreamt about. That's
Oh, yeah.
so cool. I mean, what a great story. What a great launch for you. I mean,
Oh, definitely.
there are people who are still scrambling, trying to get people to pay attention to their work.
Yeah.
And it's you've got that thing.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you a question based on something that a question that my wife had asked me once. She asked me, did I want to be sustained by my art or supported by my art? I couldn't pick both. I could only pick one. So sustained meaning it just makes me feel good when I get up in the morning. I'll draw. If I never sell a piece, oh well. Versus no, I'm doing this drawing because I think I can sell these. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, that's a hard question. I've never been asked a question like that before, but I would say sustained because it's my personal enjoyment. I don't care if no one else, if everyone's looking at it and they're like, wow, that's ugly. I'm like, well, it makes me happy. It makes me feel good doing it, getting up and drawing. Who cares if I never sell a piece? Who cares if none of my art gets likes or comments on Instagram? It's what makes me happy. It's what, and of course, I love the support that I get from my friends and my family, but it's what makes me happy. And that's all that really matters. As long as I'm happy doing it, I don't want to have a bunch of people who are like, wow, that's amazing. And it's eventually it's going to lose its spark. You're not going to, if you keep doing it and doing it just to sell pieces, because you might lose that enjoyment for it because it's just become such a priority to pump out art, pump out art, pump out art.
Yeah,
So
I mean, talk about wise beyond your years. You probably heard that term
you.
applied to you several times, but it's so true. I mean, I've known people who were considered very good cooks, and people, oh, you should open up a restaurant. You should do, and I was like, no, why? Why? Because what I'm doing is I do for my family and it's fun and I enjoy it. But to scale it up, it doesn't become fun anymore. It's a job. And then you learn to hate it and then you just walk away from it. And that's a really bad thing to do. Other than well, materials and techniques, getting ready. This is you're into your final semester, unless they're trimesters, where you go to school now for middle school.
Mhm.
You got your sights on high school, obviously. They've got a good art program there, and you know that from there, um, um, there's applying to undergraduate school.
Right.
From undergraduate school, um, if you don't have to, but it's almost a given. You go from your BFA to your MFA, your Master's in Fine Arts, from your
Right.
Bachelor's in Fine Arts. The one thing about the MFA is that it's a security or an insurance program, so to speak, because now with an MFA, you'll be able to teach, which would be so cool that you'd be able to teach. And I think that's something you ought to consider because
Yeah.
you've got the passion for it, you've got the communication skills for it, and you've got the enthusiasm. And there's nothing, as a teacher, you could become an immortal, believe it or not,
Mhm.
because you will live on in the minds of all the students that you taught.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I've had some of my cousins who are younger than me. Like I said, I'm 13. I'll have cousins who are 10 or 8 or even down to like 6 who will see my art and come up to me and say, can you show me how you do that? And I'll get out a blank piece and I'm like, well, what do you want to draw? They'll show me and I'll show them step by step, encourage them. And if they're like, oh, I don't think I drew, I don't know the eye right. How can you show me again? I'll be like, yes. And I'll take it slower a little bit, help them figure it out. And I did this over the summer with one of my cousins, and I could see how much me showing her I think helped. And I'm like, wow, I didn't expect it to help that much because she was already a pretty good artist. And she wanted to see how I draw because she likes my art a lot. And I'm like, well, let me show you. And just looking at it, she's like, I don't think it came out good. It's not as good as yours. And I'm like, well, you just have to practice. You need to do what I do and get up in the morning and draw and get up and practice. I get this is what every artist will say. You got to practice. You got to look at your references and really study how art works and figure out how can I do this better? How can I do that better? And I saw her art maybe a few months later and I'm like, wow, that's like improvement, 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 improvement. And just how much art can improve in such a short time and how much I feel that I helped someone. I'm like, wow, I taught someone something. I did not expect to do that.
And it's a really cool feeling.
Yeah,
It's a really cool feeling, especially when you see the light. There's this thing in their eyes. You'll see it. I call it the light. It's like all of a sudden, bingo, and they
yeah.
get it. They got it. Now they're gonna go for it on, pretty much on their own. What do you think of the word talent? We'll be wrapping it up pretty soon, but what do you think of the word talent?
Talent can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. there's a lot of people who have said to me like, "Oh, you're a natural at art. You've just been born with such a talent." And I don't like when people say that, because I've drawn for all my life. I've practiced. You could look at my art when I was like 8 or 9 and be like, "Wow, that's not good." And then look at my art now and be like, "Wow." So I wasn't born with an art talent. I've just practiced and persevered through a lot of different like problems and like roadblocks in my art. I am self-taught. I learned off of YouTube and Google. And it's just when people say you're just born with a talent, I'm like, not really, because I've had to practice. I've had to do a lot to get my art from where it was to where it is now. But when you say it in the terms of like, wow, the practice you've put into it, you have such a talent for art. I'm like, well, yeah, you're acknowledging the practice and the hard work that I've put in to bring myself from average level for my age to more advanced for my age. Then it just, I guess, depends on the context, whether you acknowledge all the what's brought me to where I am today, or if you don't. And I just feel when you acknowledge the work that I've put into it, it's just that much better for me.
No, excellent. I totally agree. That whole talent thing. Well, yeah, there are people who, my granddaughter, for one, it doesn't matter what she touches. I remember, at birthday parties and stuff, people would be, "Oh, what bakery did you?" She was like 9 and saying, "What bakery did you get that cake from?" And her mother would say, "We didn't get that at a bakery." "Oh, you didn't? No, did you get it? That's not from the supermarket." "No, Callie did it." It's like everything she touched, it just came natural to her,
Wow. Yeah.
And I almost wonder if rather than talent, maybe it's an attitude of
Yeah.
failure. I don't want to say it's not that failure is not an option, is that failure doesn't even enter into the thing, because
Right.
failures, let's just say that there are drawings that you thought could have come out better, but did you
Oh,
learn
yeah.
more from that bad drawing, so to speak, than you did from a drawing that just came out of nowhere?
Right, definitely. I can look at some of my drawings from recent years where background's colored. Everything looks great. I'm like, wow, okay, that's nice. I like how this came out. I'll put it up on my Instagram. It'll get what, like 20 likes, maybe less, maybe more, and I'll be like, okay, yeah, sure. But then when I draw something and I'm like, wow, that does not look good, I think to myself, well, what doesn't look good? What part of this doesn't look good? So we know, don't do it again. It's usually the eyes are misplaced, like one's a little bit higher than the other, and right away that throws it off. And I'll try again, try to reposition the eyes, make the ears a little smaller. That's a problem I have, making ears way too big, making eyes way too big. So just trying to scale it down a little bit, make the hair a little more detailed, add a little more shading and lighting and make it look better. And I'm like, well, look at this. Now I like this piece more than the ones that just, boom, came out of nowhere, because now I'm like, well, I've improved this. I've improved that. It was a good concept in my head, not so great my first try on paper, but you keep trying, keep evolving, keep figuring out the style, then it's like, wow, okay, I've done something, and I'm just looking at it and I'm like, there's so much that I've improved from where I started to what's come out now. And I definitely learn more from things that don't come out great the first time and come out better another time, or just don't come out great at all, and I just figure out what I did and apply that to other drawings, versus the ones that I'm just not paying attention, just drawing, just sketching, and it's beautiful. But I'm like, I didn't learn anything. I knew what to do. I figured out what to do. And maybe, yeah, I've learned how to do this a lot from some of my old drawings, but based on the ones that are retries of like old stuff, and looking at it and being like, wow, that definitely, I learned a lot more from that.
You definitely have the approach and the attitude of a, professional artist. I was going to say mature artist. but of a professional artist. And what I mean by professional is, well, you are a professional artist. You've sold how many pieces?
I have
That qualifies
sold,
you.
yeah, because I sold two for the New Bedford Light Fine Arts Club. I
Yeah.
sold two of my pieces for that. I sold one at Gallery X, and I did a commission for someone from the New Bedford Light. I sold a commission to them. So that's four right off the bat. And
Right.
then I put a lot just up. Like I did the Whaling Museum. I've done my other piece at Gallery X, another one for Gallery X that's coming up. My children's book, when that gets published, I get half the proceeds to that. So it's like, yeah, I've sold a lot of pieces, but I've also just put my art up for people to see. I've had people approach me. Wow, this is great. Here's another opportunity. Wow, this is great. Here's another opportunity.
Speaking
And
of
all of a
which,
sudden, I have a bunch of opportunities for myself, and I choose the ones that sound more appealing to me. And I'm like, well, then let's do this. Let's do that. And I have sold in total of four main pieces. When the book comes out, of course, all of those books will go to basically selling my art. But just, I feel like there's also something special about just having it up and having people see it and recognizing my name eventually. It's just, no matter how many pieces I sell, no matter how much it's up there, it's special to me. No matter how many likes I'll get on my Instagram or comments or people saying, wow, that's beautiful, it all means a lot to me. But in the end, it's my enjoyment.
yeah, yeah, it is. It's true. That's absolutely true. And before I forget, talk about opportunities. If you go on to theartistindex.com and do the search for Roger Andrews, and he has a program called Sketchy Goichi. He's a professional artist. He's a product designer for Hasbro. And he has these drawing methods, techniques, teaching method. Again, it's another door. It's another way of looking at how things are done. Because I mean, you got Roger, you've got Betty Edwards for drawing on the right side of the brain, and you've got Nicolaides, so the natural way to draw. So there's more than one way to approach it. Well, we're going to wind this down, Chloe. This has been wonderful. The last thing that you'd like people to know, well, not the last thing, but to close it out, what would you like people to know about there's the contact information that's going to be on the podcast page. What was the one thing that you'd like people to know about you that they don't know about you?
That's a good question. Just that art has affected my life in so many different ways. Just how much happiness it's brought to me, and through just everything that I've been through with my art. It's whether it's people saying, wow, that's amazing, whether it's my friends at school being like, wow, that's so cool, or just me drawing at home. Art has affected my life, and to any artists who might be listening, there's just perseverance, practice. Those are the two main things. You just got to persevere, you got to practice, and eventually just art brings so much happiness to me, and I know how much happiness it brings to everyone else in the art community, and how much happiness it brings to my family or my friends seeing me do art, and they know how much happiness it brings to me, and I think might bring happiness to them. My followers on Instagram at CMC_illustrations, all of them, everyone, they're just following me and supporting me, whether it's family or random people on the internet. It's just art is a passion of mine, and I will always love it.
Actually, one more thing, because when you were speaking, you reminded me of something else. You're very, very, very fortunate. I met your parents and your family. I mean, my gosh, the support was phenomenal.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Imagine another young woman like yourself she's like your clone, but the parents just don't get it. Why does she want to do this? Why doesn't she go to secretarial school? Why
Right,
does she want to be a lawyer, a doctor, or something? Why does she want to be an artist? What's
right.
your advice to that young person?
Never stop, no matter what. even if people don't support it and they're like, oh, that's not good enough. Why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? If it brings you happiness over all else, even if people don't support you, then just keep going. You're doing great. You're doing amazing. And no matter where life takes you, if you're happy, don't let other people bring you down for your art. Don't let people bring you down saying it's not good enough. You should do this instead. No, you're happy with it. That's all that matters. Your happiness matters over anyone else being happy about your art. It's your art. Like I said, your art, not their art. It's not for their enjoyment, it's your enjoyment. So just keep it up. Don't let people stop you, and definitely don't give up. Practice, keep it going. You're doing great.
Excellent. Chloe, thanks so much. Folks, that ends another podcast with our very special guest, Chloe Marie Costa. I'll go for the whole name there because, I'd like to say in a couple of years up the line, you heard it here first. All right. Well, thanks once again for joining us. Thank you, Chloe. Thank you to your parents and your family. And with that in mind, we'll see you next week or next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week for another episode of the South Coast Artist Index podcast. To learn more about the South Coast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.